Welcome, Peace Corps community. I am Kenya Adams, Program Manager in the Office of Third Goal and Return Volunteer Services with the Peace Corps. And on behalf of Peace Corps, I would like to welcome you all and thank you for joining us today for Resume Writing Workshop with the Federal Emergency Management Agency, also known as FEMA. Please note that today's webinar will be recorded. During the webinar, please drop any questions that you have into the Q&A box and look in the chat for relevant links and additional information. We have received your questions submitted during the registration and we'll be addressing them throughout. I will now like to introduce our FEMA representatives today. We have Program Manager for the Return Peace Corps Hiring Initiative with FEMA, Juan Garcia, and Lead HR Specialist, Chip Lankert, who will lead us in a presentation. Welcome, Chip.
Thank you. Glad to be here today. Well, I want to thank everybody for coming today. I'm going to share my screen and get started on the presentation. Today's presentation is designed to help you prepare as you get ready for this job fair that's coming up, because the information I'm going to share, some of it's going to be specifically about FEMA, but when I start talking about building your resume, that will work for any type of federal job you're looking for, and I'll go over that as I get into it. I'm going to do that FEMA overview. I'm going to talk about some of our position types, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about the federal resumes. I'm going to skip the portion at the end about USA jobs, because although that's important, the thing about this is you're not going to know about which jobs are at the job fair before you get there. So you have to be prepared to come in with the necessary information to move forward. FEMA is a very large agency, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, and our mission's very simple. We help people before, during, and after disasters. We have over 21,000 employees, and you can see we have a diverse breakdown in the organization because we deal with people across the spectrum around the 54 states and territories of the United States. What does it mean when there's a disaster? We're getting right into that season now for hurricanes. Well, it's not a disaster just because the Weather Channel shows up. It's a disaster once the governor of that state asks the president of the United States to come in and the president approves us coming in to respond to that disaster. So those steps have to happen before we're able to participate. Then when we participate, there's two different aspects of it. The first is the response phase. This is the one everybody sees on the news. This is when we come in and we coordinate all the supplies coming in and all the people coming in and start setting things up to get the communities back to where they were. Our job is to manage all of that and work with the state and local agencies to make that happen. But that's only a very small portion of what FEMA does. A majority of what we do happens long after it's out of the news. That's what's called the recovery phase. The recovery phase is the long-term response to helping them and the communities rebuild and get to where they were. I just want to share something with you real quick. Think about Hurricane Katrina, how long ago that was. We still have offices in New Orleans that are dealing with that. Hurricane Sandy in New York and New Jersey, 12 years. Just because it's not in the news doesn't mean we're not still involved in it. So there are lots of opportunities to come and help others with FEMA. Where are we located? Our main office is in Washington, D.C., which we manage and run the program out of. But we also have 10 regional offices throughout the country. Each one of those regional offices has smaller offices within it. And we respond back to the recovery and response for disasters out of those locations. Each regional office actually coordinates all the states that are in that color-coded grouping. So it's just so you get a little idea that we're not just all in one place. We are all in all 54 states and territories. So that includes Guam, Puerto Rico, the Virgin Islands, etc. So I just want to share that with you guys. The big thing I want to cover is our position types, because most people, when they're looking for a federal job, this is the only one they know about, the permanent full-time position. These are only 20% of our full-time jobs. I'm sharing that because a lot of people think this is all there is, and you miss out on some really great opportunities. Permanent full-time positions have a special hiring authority. That's great as a returning Peace Corps volunteer because you're eligible for that special hiring authority. But again, these are only 20% of our jobs. We have a lot of other jobs out there that you can qualify for, sometimes easier than it is to qualify for these permanent full-time positions. That what I'm talking about here is what's called a core employee, a cadre on-call response and recovery employee. That's what I am, Juan is, Netta is. These are our folks. We're paid with federal disaster funds. We're still full-time employees. We get the same benefits, get the same retirement. But like I said, we're paid with federal disaster funds, and we don't have to have a special hiring authority to hire somebody. We can name select you for a job based off the fact your resume shows you have those skills and experience. In fact, there'll be jobs there at this event where that's all they're looking for is your resume to show you have those skills, and they can get you qualified for that job. And it's important to understand that these core positions are exclusive to FEMA. No other federal agency has these because we're the only ones that get paid under federal disaster funds. Like I said, it's a very streamlined process. And as you go to the job fair, you'll see what we're talking about with that. We also have what are called local hires. These are short-term jobs, 120 days or less. I share those because maybe you'll start here just to get your foot in the door while you're still looking for that longer-term position. These local hire positions typically hire within 72 hours because we need them right away, but they are tied to a specific geographical area. Right now, for example, I know we have a lot down in Maui, but I've also seen Kentucky recently. I've also seen Winchester, Virginia. I see them all over the place. So it's important to understand that this is just a different category. Again, exclusive to FEMA. Then we have one of my favorite positions, and that's the FEMA reservist. These are our on-call as needed folks. They're the ones that go out and respond to a disaster based off the need. We don't know where the need's going to be until the disaster claim request comes in. But these are the folks that go out and respond out to those disasters. FEMA picks up their travel, their meals, their lodging. They get paid. They're going to get overtime while they're working there. A lot of great opportunities here. Again, another streamlined process, which I'll go over in a second. But one of the nice things about the reservist positions is they have job protection. If you have another job outside of being a FEMA reservist, your employer can't get rid of you. You're protected under what's called the CREW Act, and they have to keep your job for you when you deploy with FEMA. Our reservists, kind of like the rest of FEMA, are broken down into 23 different, we call them cadres or groupings of individuals, all based off their skill set. And every one of these cadres is looking for different skills. So the skills you need to work in finance is going to be different than the skills you need to work in disaster survivor assistance. So that means your resume is going to have to be focused to the job or jobs you're looking for. But the good news is you can do some of this research up front and sit there and say, these are the kind of things I need to have my resume talk about. And I'll get to that in a little bit, but I'm going to provide some links on the next screen. Take a screenshot there of some of this, but you also get these in an email afterwards. And you can go do some research and learn about the reservist careers, the cadres that are within FEMA, to use that to help focus your resume on the jobs you're looking for. Why am I talking so much about that? Because your resume has to contain the experience you gained. You can gain it through employment. You can gain it through being in the Peace Corps. You can gain it through volunteer positions where you're not being paid. The key thing is we have to know what you did. You have to explain to us not only where you worked, but what you did in that job, what the results were. Okay, look like there. So I apologize. Might just been my computer. But I'm sharing that because it's not just a degree that's going to qualify you for a job. It can help, but you can see from here that Bachelor's degree only gets up to you a GS5 job, and that's less than 1% of the jobs in FEMA. Most of our jobs are going to be GS9 or above. So that's why it's important to have your resume show what you've done. You could also have experience as a student volunteer. I talked about volunteering a little bit, and this is just unpaid experience while you're still in school, but it's still experience. The volunteer service, Peace Corps, AmeriCorps, FEMA Corps, American Red Cross, any of those. Your experience counts, but you have to tell us what you did. You can't just list it like that and say, these are the places I volunteered. You have to tell us what you did in those organizations. We're going to skip over the piece of FEMA Corps and go straight into the federal resume basics, because I really want to get into this with you, because your resume is your paper interview. It's how you market yourself, you create your first impression, and you educate us on the skills you're bringing to the table. We have to see how the results, what you've done is going to provide the results you're looking for. And a lot of the stuff you've done in Peace Corps is really relevant to what we do in FEMA. Some of the big differences between a federal and a private sector resume is a federal resume is up to 5 pages long. It goes into a high level of detail. You can see that private sector resume is only 1 to maybe 2 pages long, and you don't really go into a lot of detail. The federal government, we need the details. That's what's going to drive the train for you. And you have to meet all the requirements that we're looking for when we tell you what the qualifications are. That's why I say it's your paper interview, because if we told you what the qualifications are, your resume needs to give those back to us and show us how you did that. You're going to do that. And a lot of questions we get are, what format should I use? How should I build it? Well, there's no mandated format, but there are some links that we provide that give you a template to build that resume. I'm even providing a template for you, which you can do through hand. Make sure it's chronological in order. And my recommendation is going to be the very first time you do it through USA Jobs Resume Builder, and then you can use that as your basis to modify it for each different job you apply to. Some of the things that's going to need to be in your resume. You need your contact information. Name, phone number, email address, all of that needs to be there. You don't need to have your full mailing address. City and state is fine. But one of the things I'm going to challenge you on is have someone else pick up your resume, type your email address in, try to send you an email, have them try and call you, make sure the numbers are good. Can't tell you how many times I've gotten a resume with bad information and I have no way to contact the person. So make sure that's checked where it's right. Tell us about your education, where you went to school, when you got your degrees, if you have degrees. Grade point average, not that important, but if you want to put it on that resume. Go into detail where you worked. Tell us the name of the job, the name of the company and where it's located, how long you were there. Notice I said month, day, and year to month, day, and year. We want the full dates as best as possible. Doesn't have to be perfect, but just the best you can. Tell us how many hours a week you worked, because that factors into determining if you have enough experience for the job. And then let us know if it was a federal job. And if it was, great. Tell us the step and the grade. If it's equivalent to, tell us that too. We need to know that. I've worked jobs where I did not work for the federal government, but I was equivalent to a GS-14. It's important for me to have that in my resume because I can clearly indicate I have that level of experience. Then I'm going to tell you, don't just tell us your job title. You have to describe what you did. Tell us what you did in that job. Your job title does not always tell us what you did in that job. You could say you were a cashier. That means different things to different people, but you might have done some other things there. Oh, I did accounts receivable. I did customer service complaints. I helped people apply for credit cards, so I gathered personal identification information to make decisions in accordance with state and federal regulations. Sounds a lot more impressive than just a cashier when I explain it in more detail. But really go into that. Define how you did the job. Did you work as part of a team? Were you a supervisor? Highlight the accomplishments. You guys have some phenomenal accomplishments having worked in Peace Corps, dealing with community leaders in other countries and helping that community get to where you were. You have to explain that to us. We can't guess at it. You have to tell us what you did. And then make sure you give us the relevant information. If it's something that's not relevant to the job, don't spend a lot of time there. Focus on the stuff that's going to get you the job you're looking for. Tell us your language skills. Very important, because Juan can tell you, having worked in the applicant processing section, waiting for someone on a language line takes a long time, and we don't want people tied up. They've already been through enough stress. We need to know if you're multilingual and what languages that is, because that's going to help you. Let us know any awards or affiliations that you have with different civic organizations. You can have your references in there. Don't worry about the position task book. You're not a FEMA reservist, so that doesn't apply to you. But then, like I said, again, documenting that experience. If it's intermittent experience, still the same month, day, and year to the month, day, and year, and list what you did. We need to know that information. Some stuff not to put in your resume. And this is important because you don't want to push this information out there to people. Don't want to put any sensitive information there, of course. Please do not put in your date of birth and social security number. We don't care. We don't need to know it. And you don't want anyone to take your identity. We don't need your picture. No personal information, height, weight, whether you're married, single, doesn't matter. It doesn't belong in a resume. And then don't put in what political party you go to or anything along those lines like that. Just the very basic, the basic information. None of that other information should be in there. One of the things I am going to tell you is putting together an effective statement. And it looks like my slide glitched here for a second, but I'm going to give you an example here. If we say we're looking for someone that knows how to create and maintain a filing system, what does that mean? Well, here's two examples of it. You look at what you did, how you did it, and what the results were. And we color-coded it here. What this person did was organize travel documentation by creating a categorized paper filing system. It could have been an electronic filing system. And then what did it result in? It allowed travel specialists and managers to effectively retrieve files when completing audits, assisting travelers, and reconciling discrepancies. This person went into some more detail. They said they also developed a file cover sheet, and it helped decrease the instance of missing documentation during audits and reduced follow-up by 30%. Those are effective statements. That's telling us what you did, how you did it, and what the results were. Managers love to see the results that you save time or money. That's important. Now, who's going to review this resume? And I'm keeping an eye on the time because I'm going to make sure you have time for question and answers. There's two different teams that are going to look at your resume. The first one is the human resources team, our staffing specialists. They're the ones that put the job announcements out there, but they're going to look at your resume to say, does Chip meet the minimum qualifications for this job? The minimum qualifications are in the job announcements. So if your resume doesn't meet it, you didn't do good on that paper interview. Your resume has to show you meet those minimum qualifications. They're also the ones that are going to make your job offer. And you notice I keep saying them and they. They're people. It is not a computer program. These are real people that sit down and read your resume. It's not, you don't have to try and fight a computer. You're having a person that's reading your resume. Once they've done all that, your resume gets sent to a selecting official. That selecting official is going to read your resume to see who the most qualified candidates are of the ones that met the minimum qualifications. They're the ones that are going to do your interview. They're the ones that are going to decide who gets hired, not human resources. That manager decides who they want on their team. So like I said, it's important to understand that it's real people that are doing all this. It's not a computer program. I talked a little bit about I showed you the education slide earlier as a teaser, but again, the information in here is HR is looking for your minimum qualifications. They're looking at the education. If they don't see it on education, then they go for experience. and they're looking at how many years experience you need in certain jobs. And that's why it's important to have that broken down that way. They're looking to see if you meet the criteria for the job. They're looking at your education, your training, and your certifications. And they use certain standards to make that happen because that's what they have to qualify you under. That is really a lot of what I wanted to cover in a nutshell, because this federal resume is not a simple process. I'm going to actually go back up to the federal resume slide and really to spend some time here talking about this with you. Then we're going to do our question and answer. This resume is what's going to get you the job. Take the time. Don't just sit there and think I can do this in an hour. Spend some time writing this resume. You're going to go into detail. You're really going to try and show us that you are the most qualified person to do this job. That's why it's so important to take the time to do this. When you sit there and look at your resume, just doesn't give us 2 sentences about that job. Go into detail. When I go into the Q&A here, I'm going to actually ask if somebody wants to give me an example of something they did, and we're going to try and break it out a little bit further to show you there's other ways to really expand out on those details to help make sure you're qualified for that job. Except there's a lot that goes into this. It's not a simple process, but the key thing is anytime you're building that federal resume, not just for FEMA, you're going to look at what that agency is looking for, and it's going to look different every time. The same job might look 5 different ways on a vacancy announcement. I'll give you an example of that. A human resources specialist. I'm a human resources specialist. I recruit. I don't know how to do staffing. I know a little bit about payroll, but not enough to be a payroll expert. I don't know about the details of employee benefits. I don't know the details of onboarding and employee engagement. Those aren't my strengths. I just gave you 6 different roles within human resources that all have the job title human resources specialist. So you have to look at the job and sit there and say, what did I do? Where were my strengths? Where were my skills? And write your resume to the ones that are appropriate, because you might find that the job that you're looking for was also going to have an entirely different job title when you start looking at it with the federal government. So it's, like I said, it's very important to do that research and make sure that resume goes into that details. It's all about the details when we pull our resumes together and we really start building that. So what I want to do is, I know some of you are putting stuff in the question and answer. I'm going to go my very last slide so you can, I apologize. I thought I was going right to the last slide and it went past it. That way you have my contact information, because I want you to be able to get in touch with me after the event. There we go. But what I'm going to do is I really want to spend some time going through the questions and answers. I know you guys had some questions beforehand, and I know you probably have some more now. So let's spend some time helping you be successful as we do this. So Kenya, if you guys want to take this back over and start guiding through the questions, we will go from there.
Sure. Thank you, Chip. Such an informative presentation. So the first question I have is, if I have 2 master's degrees, 3 full years, does that qualify me for a GS-11 or only a GS-9?
Okay. Well, again, a master's only qualifies you up to GS-9. It's not a doctorate. However, again, it's your experience. I will tell you my personal story. When I came to work for FEMA, I was in a master's program. I came to work for FEMA. I was hired as a GS-11. I had my bachelor's, a very high grade point average. That qualified me for a GS-7. I was hired as an 11 because my skills and my experience that I listed in that resume carried me beyond my degree. Every one of you that has served in the Peace Corps has traveled, you've gone somewhere else in the world, and you have done some amazing missions. You might have brought water into villages. You might have helped develop schools. There's a lot of different things you might have done. It's explaining to us what you did in that job that's going to step you above that 9 level to get you up to an 11 or maybe even a 12 level. But it's, you have to tell us what you did, because Kenya wasn't there. Caitlin wasn't there. Only you were. Chip wasn't there. Neither was Juan. So we can't say, oh, well, I know that Netta did X, Y, and Z. We weren't there. We didn't see it. You have to sell us. That's why I said your resume is your marketing tool. You have to convince us you have those skills. So like I said, don't let the degree hang you up.
Mhm.
Look at the degree, put the information there, but then go into detail. What did you actually do? And that's what's going to set you apart as well. So hopefully that answered that question for that individual. So what's the next question, Kenya?
Great. All right. Let's see. Let's see. Is a degree required for FEMA positions? So a bachelor's, master's, is that required?
No. I know many federal employees at FEMA that do not have any type of degree. People are hired off their skills. You're going to hear me say that a lot, but it really is the skills. You don't have to have a degree. There are some phenomenal people that I work with that don't have any degree at all. And even in some of the programs like FEMA Corps, I've seen team leads managing a team of 10 people that don't have a degree, and they're leading people that have bachelor's and master's degrees. It's your skills that carry you apart, nothing more.
Thank you. That really resonates. Making sure skills, you're driving it home that the skills that they've acquired as a Peace Corps volunteer could really help them get and not hinder them. So make sure you write out your skills. Great. The next question is, how best to tailor your resume as someone who has been freelancing since close of service and no longer has their NCE?
Okay, very good question. Because that NCE letter is only good for a limited period of time. And since I still have my screen shared, I'm gonna pop back in here because I love being able to roll through and help you guys. Core positions, reservist positions, no special hiring authority. PFT or GS positions, you need that letter. Look at the core jobs. You're looking for those opportunities where your skills are what matter. Freelancing, nothing wrong with that. I did that for several years. It can work in your favor. You have to go into detail on what you did though. I mean, I can't just sit there and list that I owned a company. And if I just sat there and said I was the owner of CLC Enterprises and, gave a little bit of detail, that doesn't tell much. But, oh, I published a newspaper. We did sales and marketing. We did this, we did that. And I start going into details on what we did. We developed new neighborhoods for construction. And I start going into detail. Now, all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, yeah, he owned a company, but now I know what he actually did. And you go into those details. You freelanced, you did a lot of stuff. You probably understand billing. You probably understand marketing. You understand customer service. There's a lot of skills you pick up when you're freelancing and running your own show. But you have to be able to communicate them into your resume to show you're qualified to do those jobs.
Thank you. How many years should I go back on a resume?
Okay, that's a very good question. And the answer I'm going to give you is going to sound weird. As long as you need to show you have the skills and experience to do that job. I'll tell you myself, I joined the military in 1981. I go back to 1981 on my resume. Why? Because the skills I have from those time periods are relevant to the jobs I'm applying to. I also have periods I skip because when I was in college and I was driving for Lyft and Uber just to get some little bit of extra spending money, yeah, that was kind of cool, but it's not related to me coming to work for the federal government in the roles that I'm trying to be in. As if I'm trying to be a HR specialist, if I'm trying to be a chief of staff for a leadership program, Really doesn't matter if I drove for Lyft and Uber. What matters is the skills that are relevant. Oh, those leadership skills are important. These skills are important. The human resources I did during certain time periods was important. So you tailor your resume to what you're applying to. There's no right or wrong answer to how far to go back, but I also don't go back to stuff that has no bearing on what I'm doing, which was the stuff prior to me coming in the military. But even sometimes on my resume, I might not even talk about a lot what I did when I first got in, because a lot of it's not relevant to what I'm applying to. So hopefully that answered your question. Just go back as long as you need to show you have the experience.
Right, thank you. These are great questions. Let's see, what else do I see here? In addition to the general guidelines for resumes, what are some standout items the FEMA looks for in resumes, such as experience or skills, as we talked about? Any standouts?
Well, let me see. Some of the standouts I'll share with you is, again, we like to see that you are perhaps done some research and prepared it a little bit, because we want to see that your resume shows that you understand what we do. When we are looking for a logistics specialist, we want you to demonstrate that you have the skills. And I'm going to pull something up and reshare it real quick. But just to give you an idea, I was talking earlier about the reservist positions and that the fact that they're broken down into cadres. And I'm going to go into that section right now. Let me just reshare my screen. And when I go to the FEMA careers page and I look at my career paths, if I go down to the reservists and the cadres, this is how you set yourself apart. And my screen didn't share yet. So hold on. There it is. Now it's sharing. So I'm in the reservists. I'm looking at cadres, and all 23 cadres are listed here. Each one is looking for different skills. And I'm just going to go through, just scroll through a few of them right here. But if I sit there and say, well, what does disaster field training operations mean? We tell you what the qualifications are for that job. So what you need to do is look at those qualifications and sit there and say, if I'm sitting there, I'm going to look at it. And if I'm Kenya, I'm going to sit there and say, okay, what jobs did I have where I had extensive knowledge of principles, techniques, and methodologies of adult education to plan, develop, and design and deliver training classes? And as Kenya, I'm going to list every job underneath there where I did that. And then I'm going to do the next one, and I'm going to do the next one. But that's not my resume. That's my homework. Then I put that resume in the format, and I make sure that I put that statement under each and every job that I said I did that at, because then I show, oh, wow, Chip's got 9 years experience doing that. Kenya has 12 years experience using Microsoft Office, SharePoint, and Adobe Connect. Boom. You show us in each job where you did it. That's what we look for. That's what sets you apart. The skill, the classes, everything else. Yeah, it's great to have some of the certification courses, but yeah, funny thing, I'd already done all the FEMA 100, 200, 700, 800 when I worked in a healthcare system. Came to FEMA, guess what I had to do my first week in FEMA? All the same classes again, and we do them annually. So it's just like, it's not that you have that certification suddenly going to set you apart. It's how well you communicate that you are the person for that job. And if you use the tools out there by looking at job announcements and seeing what's out there and what qualifications are needed, that's what's going to set you apart when you write your resume. You want that manager to look at it and say, I cannot consider anybody for this position unless I look at Sophia and say, I want Sophia's resume, because she clearly has the skills that I need to be on this team. And that's the goal of your resume, is to have that manager feel that strongly about you once they read it. So hopefully that answers that question.
All right, thank you. All right, next question. Would you recommend references to be added to the resume?
That's a good question. It can be, but what I have found, having done the interviews and everything else, we're not going to call the references before your interview's done. We're going to make sure you're qualified for the job, and we know we want you in that job before we're going to do your follow-ups to go ahead and talk to your references. That's always done after the fact. I've never interviewed for any position where they called my references before I even went in for the interview. It always happens afterwards. So a lot of people stress about it. Oh, I got to make sure I have good references. I keep it on a separate sheet of paper. So after the interview, when they say, well, we'd really like to get your references, I can hand it to them.
Okay.
And that way, that gives me an indication, okay, there's going to be some follow-up next. Because they wouldn't have asked me for my references if they weren't going to call them to consider me for that position.
All right. What is the best way to format entries on USA Jobs?
Well, again, there's a resume builder right there. I would use the resume builder. It walks you through the process. It tells you what to fill in, what you need to fill in under each and every job. It's going to take some time, but once you did it, you just save it. You can use it over and over again. You can edit it. You can do what you want. And that's what I always do. I modify my resume for each job I apply to, and you just go in and start cutting and pasting and moving it around. But use that format. The first time, I would definitely recommend using the resume builder. And funny thing, it's in every FEMA vacancy announcement. And since I have the computer up, if I went in and I wanted to look at this first vacancy announcement on USA Jobs, and I start scrolling down through this announcement, and I get into my requirements and my qualifications, right here, are you qualifying based on your work experience? Very first hyperlink. We encourage you to use the USA Jobs Resume Builder. We really try and make it simple. We don't want you to have to guess where it is. And all you do is click on the link, and it'll start taking you through the help center to go ahead and build your resume. Really simple, really easy. Goes right through it. There's even videos on how to build your resume. So there's a lot of resources out there to help you be successful. I mean, look at all this information they're providing you to help you build that resume. Let's go to the next question.
Yes, next question. How important is the resume compared to networking?
Very good question. And the resume, well, first off, you really can't network if you're applying through USA Jobs. Very hard to network because you don't know who you need to talk to. You just don't. And if that hiring manager talks to you before they get your resume, guess what? You're not eligible to be interviewed for that position because that gives them a biased opinion of you. Can't do that. But networking is crucial. I have never gotten a job where I didn't network my way into that position. Even the position I got with the federal government initially was a result of networking, and I got told about a live event that I could go to and get my resume in front of some hiring managers. So the networking got me to know where the jobs were, but I never networked with any of the people I interviewed with. I was networking with just somebody that helped me find a place to go to apply for the job. And I had applied for years through USA Jobs that I never made it. And I went to that live event, and the rest is history. That was 9 years ago, and I've been with FEMA ever since. But networking to me is vital. And Juan will jump right in and say it too. Both of us have almost 30,000 people following us on LinkedIn. You have to network. You have to build relationships, because that's where you're going to find out about jobs you wouldn't have even known about.
Do you really have to put the month, the date, and the year for each job?
Okay, that's a good question. And let me explain to you why we say that. If I told you I worked for a company and I started in January of 2023, and I was there through December of 2023. Kenya, how many months does that sound like to you?
That sounds like 12.
It's 10. Because if I don't know the date you started in January, I have to err on the side of caution. You started January 31st. I don't know when you left in December. You left December 1st. You have 10 months experience. I'm sorry, Kenya, I needed a year's experience. You don't have it. That's why it's important. but don't hang yourself up on the date. Yeah, people said to me, well, how do you know? What if you're off a day? Who cares? We really don't care if you're off a day. I can tell you when I started working for the hospital, I know it was in December. It was sometime around the beginning of December. I don't know if it was the 1st, the 5th, the 7th. I just put the 3rd. I don't know the exact day. I just tried to ballpark it. I knew it was the beginning of the month. I know it's the middle of the month. I know it's the end of the month. But you give us the time that you were there so that way they can figure it out. And it's not just to qualify you for the job. You know, one of the things I'll share with you about applying for a federal job is if you see a job and it's a GS-9 or a GS-11 and you apply for that job, and let's say it's a GS-9, you can't go in there and say, well, you know, I want that job, but I'll only take it if you give me a GS-11. We can't add a higher pay grade. But what we can do is we can turn around and say, well, you know what? I really like that job opportunity, but I'm concerned about the amount I'm being compensated. Based on you reviewing my resume, you'll see I have 13 years experience doing this. Based on those superior qualifications, is there a way I can get a higher step to bring my salary up a little higher to be in line with where I'd like to be? Well, they can't tell you I'll have 13 years if you said I was there from this year to this year, it doesn't help them. They need to know the time because they're really trying to get you qualified. And when you start looking for a higher step when you're hired, they need to know the exact amount of time you were in those positions. So it's honestly, it's really not that hard. Some people really get hung up about, well, I don't want to have to go into that much detail. It's not that much detail if you really think about it. Just say, hey, it was the beginning of the month, end of the month, middle of the month, whatever. Just put a date. Because no one's going to sit there and go back and say, well, your employer said it was the 17th and you said it was the 15th.
All right. How do you know what level of job matches your experience if you've only worked in the private sector since returning from Peace Corps?
Well, that's a good question. And again, this is where research comes into play. Look at vacancy announcements. Look at okay, I'm not sure what a experience level I should have for a administrative specialist at the GS-11 level. Because it says, well, you have to have experience commensurate with equivalent to the 9 level. Okay, so let me find an announcement for a 9 level position. Do I have those skills? Oh, I do. Great. I'm equivalent to a 9. And you like I said, you do a little bit of research. I mean, I wish there was a simple formula, a simple way to do it, but you just take a little bit of time, do a little bit of research and say, what did I do? And what does that look like it's equivalent to? And what's amazing is some of us have done work that's at a higher level than we think it is, but we just don't know because we've never dealt with the federal government before. While I'm on that subject, I'm going to share with you when you're looking at USA jobs, and I see people make this mistake all the time. They'll reach out to me on LinkedIn. Well, Chip, I've never been in the government employment before, so I can't have experience. I can't have experience as a GS-9. Oh, you're right, but remember it says equivalent to. Doesn't say you had to have been a GS-9. The experience just has to be at that level. So do a little bit of research and look and say, do I have that level of experience? You can pretty much tell by reading the vacancy announcement what level experience each grade needs and say, do I have that level? If I do, then I'm equivalent to that level. If it's like, I'm not quite there yet, then you're probably a step below it. And it's just doing a little bit of research and being prepared to answer the questions because you get asked during an interview, say, well, based off what I did this, this, and this, and my research showed this. Okay.
Just a couple more questions. Let's see. Here's one. When applying on USA Jobs, how can we best filter for non-competitive entry-level jobs?
Great. So we did get into USA Jobs a little bit, but that's okay. I love it. I really do. I took that out to give more time for questions, and I'm glad we can throw it back in. So I changed screens here. I highlighted the wrong screen. Filters are awesome. Filters can be your best friend on USA Jobs. You can see right now, I have one filter on here already. It's filtering for FEMA. FEMA, there's 112 jobs posted right now. But then you can filter down even further. What you can do is you can look, the first two they tell you is the remote job, because that's what everybody asks for nowadays. What do you have remote? Well, right now I have no remotes, but that can change every day. But what you're going to do is you're going to look at, okay, what type of filters can I filter for? Let's see, I go to my hiring paths. I can look at what's out there. I can look out here and say, oh, there are 32 jobs open at FEMA that I could apply to as a Peace Corps, returning Peace Corps volunteer. And I've just put the filter on, it narrowed it down to those 32 jobs. And I'm going to teach you something that took me a little while to learn, because I used to do the same thing for veterans. And I would sit there and look at this and say, okay, there's 32 jobs I can apply for at FEMA that I'm going to be qualified for. Am I right?
Mm-hmm.
No. Because not only am I a returning Peace Corps volunteer, I'm also part of the general public. I'm also open to the public. So now I just went up. Now I'm qualified for 100. I have 104 jobs I can apply for. And like I said, when I first started applying for federal jobs as a veteran, I clicked on the veteran button and those are the only ones I'd look at. Understand how that filter can help you. You're not okay. The gentleman or the lady that said they've been away from Peace Corps for several years and they've been freelancing. Well, guess what? If I was looking at USA jobs in that situation, I'd only look at the open to the public, because I know I'm not going to qualify for the others unless I qualify for one of the special hiring authorities. What I'm sharing with you here is, don't spend time applying for a job you can't qualify for, because the system will let you do a lot of different things. But if you're not eligible, before you're even done, sometimes you'll be on it for 45 minutes and then all of a sudden you find out I'm not eligible. And the biggest mistake I'll share with you on this is this one right here, this little bullseye. It says internal to the agency. Almost every LinkedIn message I get from somebody who's having problems applying, when I open it up, they're applying for an internal to the agency position and they don't work for FEMA at all. It's not going to let you finish the process. The filter, like I said, the filter can be your best friend. Let me look at just the jobs I'm eligible for. Once I can do that, I can just spend my time where it needs to be spent. But like I said, filters are great. The other thing I can do is, once I've established my filter, and I'll show you an example here. Okay, I'm open to the public. Now I'm looking at FEMA, I'm open to the public, but I only want to live in Texas. There's 10 jobs out there. But let's say none of them are the jobs I want. Now what do? Look right down here in this bar where my mouse is.
Mm-hmm.
Save this search. If you click on this, it's going to make you sign in. I'm not going to sign into my personal account, but if you save this search, you can tell it to send you an email whenever a new job gets added that meets your search criteria. So you can let USA Jobs do the searching for you. Usually about 6 o'clock in the morning is usually when that email comes in. So anything that's posted between 6 o'clock yesterday morning and or 6 o'clock this morning and 6 o'clock tomorrow morning is going to pop in my inbox. And then I can look at that, and I can look at those jobs that met that criteria I was looking for. So saving the search can be one of your best friends, especially when you are doing this search. Only show me remote jobs. There's a lot of people that really want remote work. Most remote positions, unless it's a very high level or a very technical position, close out in less than 24 hours. We've already maxed out the number of applications. So important to see when you're looking at it. You have to know a little bit about the rules of the platform. So I'm glad somebody asked that, because USA Jobs, it's not my favorite place, but realistically, once you learn how to use the tools, the filters, how to read a vacancy announcement, it can make this job hunt so much easier.
Thank you. All right, here's another one. If I have a Schedule A form for disability, should you include that on your resume?
On a federal resume, yes, you should say, not include the letter, but just say qualify for Schedule A hiring authority on your federal resume. But if you're applying to the private sector using a corporate resume, I wouldn't even mention I have a Schedule A letter unless they bring it up. They're not supposed to discriminate off of that, but my experience is you put that down on a corporate resume, it's a small company. They only have 12 employees or 15 employees, and they already have one that's a high insurance premium. Pretty much rest assured they're not going to pick up another person because they don't want to lose their insurance coverage because they won't be able to afford it. Not a pleasant thing to have to tell people, but it's a fact. That stuff happens in the private sector. Doesn't happen in the government sector. We need to know because that means we can start to consider you for some of those special hiring authorities. But again, they don't apply to the core positions, so you can actually not have to worry about it. I like to call the core positions, they level the playing field. Everybody's now eligible. And it's the most qualified person is going to be the one that gets the interview. So hopefully that helps you with some of those thought ideas. But definitely I would make a statement in there that I had a Schedule A letter on my federal resume. And I have a copy ready to go to share.
All right, thank you. All right, here, okay, some additionals. Which sections of SF50 should be uploaded when applying on USA Jobs?
Well, the SF50 is a one-page document. And if they want your SF50, they want the whole form. Now, another school of thought on that is you might have multiple SF50s. I do. I have multiple SF50s. One shows that I was a GS employee, which qualifies me for that. One shows my current pay grade, which is higher than it was when I was a GS, so that qualifies me for that next grade up. So I take both of them, put them in one document, and attach both of them onto my resume. So that way, whoever's reviewing it says, oh, yes, he has enough SF50s. His SF50 clearly shows he has the pay grade and it shows that he had already been a GS employee. So it's important to understand that as you're doing it, but you should put the whole SF50 on there. It's only a one-page document.
Is the Peace Corps filter on USA Jobs only for NCE, or does that help RPCVs who finished their service many years ago? Now I can answer that one.
You should probably answer that better than I can
answer that one. So the Peace Corps filter on USA Jobs is for those who have non-competitive eligibility. But what I heard Chip say is don't limit yourself. You can, if you scroll down, Chip, for those who may have finished their service years ago, open to the public has plenty of opportunities for you as well.
Absolutely. 73 jobs, and there's no special hiring authority. So you don't have to worry about it. So many people get frustrated because, well, I had it and it ran out and I'm not eligible anymore. No, you are, but you just have to understand what's out there. Because the thing is these open to the public at FEMA. We're the only agency that has these core positions, these IC positions. So it's important to see that. And while we're on it, and right here, you'll see it says not to exceed 2 years full time. Do not let that scare you, please. That is not a 2 years I'm out of a job. That is every 2 years, because I'm on my 4th renewal as a core employee. Every 2 years, they renew me for another 2 years. And I don't even do the paperwork. They do it for me. So it's like, I know many people that retired from FEMA that were never a permanent full-time employee and retired with 26 years. It's just the way we're paid. And I've only known 2 people since I've been at FEMA that didn't get renewed on their core orders. Both of them, they eliminated the position. So it's like, you can't renew you if there's no job anymore. But the thing is everybody else gets renewed. And it's just like, it's not as scary as it looks. So many people look at that and they see that not to exceed 2 years and they get where it says temporary and they're like, oh, I don't want that. And it's like, no, there's nothing wrong with it. You just have to understand what the rules are that go along with it. And you find yourself being in a very good situation. And while we're on it, since I'm talking about those core positions, Somebody was concerned about, well, do I qualify at a high enough level? Well, if you get, and I saw this, I've seen this happen at FEMA. We had a young lady that we hired as an IC7, a Core 7. She came into work one day. She'd only been with us for a little over a month. And I saw her walking in. She looked like she was upset about something. And I asked her how her day was going and was everything okay? And she said, oh, I'm really upset. I think I made a big mistake. And my first reaction was, oh, she must have done something wrong at work. And I said, well, what'd you do wrong? Right? Do we need to talk about it? She goes, waited because I just got an offer 2 days ago to be an IC11 at FEMA. And I said, wow, congratulations. Did you take the job? And she goes, well, everybody keeps telling me I can't because I have to do my time as a 7 and my time as a 9 before I can get my 11. And I said, please tell me you didn't turn it down. She said, no, I have till tomorrow. I said, good. Tell them you want the job, because on a core position, you're allowed to skip grades. It's based on your skills and experience for the job. She was fully qualified as an 11 and she only had a bachelor's degree. Her experience carried her to that. She took the job. Yeah. And then the next pay period, she was gone. She was in that other job. And her boss even said to me, oh, I forgot all about that. I almost told her today. I was going to tell her today, she might as well just turn it down because she can't take it. And I'm like, no, we got to remember core's different. Core has some special rules, kind of a good thing. It's really good. You might get in at a lower grade, but then be able to move up quickly because you have the skills and experience.
Chip, you have been giving us some great tips and nuggets this afternoon. So thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome. That's why we wanted to do this. And I know we only got about 3 minutes left. So
yep. So I'm going to take these last two questions. The first one is, are there resume writing consultants for these positions? Are they worth engaging?
good question. Very good question. Yes, you could pay somebody to help you write your federal resume. I wouldn't, because there's a lot of free resources out there. I don't know what state everybody's in, but I know this live fairs in the DC area, right? Okay. So, I mean, some of you probably are near Maryland and Virginia and even DC. And guess what? There's people that I have relationships with that I met through LinkedIn and throughout my jobs in FEMA that they don't care who you worked for, what you did. They're certified as federal resume writers. They will sit down and help you at no cost review and write your federal resume. They're not going to write it for you, but they will help you through it. And, you know, Lady Serena Bermudez that I work with out of Virginia, she does a great job with that. She was hired to do it for veterans, but I'll tell you, she's helped more non-veterans do it than I can count, because her thing is I just want to help you. Just like me, I want to help you. That's why I do these workshops. I want you to be successful. I don't want you to have to sit there and say, I can't do this. It's not going to work. No, reach out and talk to the people. It's not that hard. And just contact the Employment Commission, contact the DOES, DC Employment Services, asking you, you want someone to help you understand how to write a federal resume. They'll help you out. And it doesn't cost you a penny. But don't sit there and spend $500 to do it. Because the funny thing is only one person can write your resume about you really well, and that's you. Because if you pay somebody, they're going to put their own spin on it. And the scary part is we're doing an interview together and I ask you questions about your resume and you can't answer it. That is not a position you want to be in, because if you got to the point of an interview, you want to be able to talk your resume up one side and down the other. And the best way to do that is be the one that wrote it. So, okay, probably one more question and then we're
the last
right
question. So when applying for jobs on USA Jobs, is it bad practice to apply for more than one position at a time?
Well, I'm going to turn that one around. Why wouldn't you?
I knew
there's no limit to the number of jobs you can apply for. Do not be one. And I know people that have done this. Well, I'm going to wait for this job to see how long it takes to close before I decide, because I really want this job and I'm just going to wait. Well, I'm going to share you my experience. I interviewed for a job. I applied for a job, interviewed for a job I really wanted, called back for a second interview, got the second interview. All of a sudden, didn't hear anything. 5 months later, finally hear something. They decided not to make a decision on that job. And we're going to re-advertise it in a couple months. So if that would have been the only job I had applied to, guess what? 5 months and nothing, and then I'm back to square one. Apply for every one that you could be eligible for. Just keep applying. I would rather be in a position where I had to decide, do I want job A or job B, than sit there and say, well, didn't get job A. Let me go ahead and start finding another job. Oh, let me apply for that one. Oh, let me wait again. No. Have that opportunity to make that choice. A lot more fun when you can say, well, I do have another offer I'm trying to consider. But it's amazing how much things will change when they know you're also looking at something else. But I would never just only apply to one. Apply often, apply to as many as you qualify for. And I hate to say this, being a FEMA recruiter, but we're not the be all to end all of all agencies. You might find a better fit somewhere else. I have no issue with that. Take the knowledge you gained today and go get that other job. I want you to be successful, because some point you're going to remember you learned it from FEMA and you might come back to us later on. And that's okay too.
Chip, this has been a wonderful conversation. I've learned so much this afternoon. I just want to thank you so much. Everyone, if you have more questions for Chip, feel free to reach out to him on LinkedIn. We will be sending out this recording at the end. And I want to remind all RPCVs, PCVs, and staff, registration is still open for our in-person career fair taking place at Peace Corps headquarters in Washington, D.C. next Thursday, June 20th. And finally, we have one more webinar left to close out our Career Fair Launchpad events. Join us Thursday, June 13th for Rock Your Profile, a Rock Your Profile session with a senior LinkedIn representative to learn how to improve your profile and get noticed during your job search. The link to register for the event and the career fair can be found in the chat. Thank you again for all that you gave us today, Chip. And everyone have a great day.